here's stitch number 3, and this is a Tunisian crochet stitch. This is a look at the back side of the stitch. And then here is the front. So go grab your 6mm hook, which is what I'm using for this square. This is a size 4 or a medium worsted yarn. 6mm hook. Let's get started. All right, so for this stitch, we're going to begin with our slip knot. For those of you that are a little more advanced, this is crocheted in multiples of 5 plus 1. You're going to need a total chain of 31 stitches if you're crocheting this 8 by 8 square for the sampler. So 31 stitches, if not 5 plus 1. I'm going to make a small sample today, so I'm just going to make a small chain. But to make your slip knot, you wrap your yarn around 2 fingers like this. Insert your hook behind this front loop, grab the one in the back and pull through. And then just tighten the knot by pulling on the individual threads. All right, so to make the chain, if you don't know how, you are going to wrap the yarn around your hook like this and pull this top loop through the bottom loop. And that's 1. Yarn over, pull through right here for 2. Yarn over, pull through, 3, 4, 5. And just continue until you have made a chain of either 31 stitches or whatever multiple of 5 plus 1. So I'm going to make a chain of 16 stitches. So let me complete that and I'll see you again in a minute. So once you've got your chain, you're going to work a regular foundation row, and that's going to be followed by just a regular return pass. For those of you that don't know what any of that is, no worries, we're going to start here. You're going to skip this first chain and you're going to insert your hook into the second one. Insert your hook into that second stitch. You're going to yarn over and you're going to pull through. And this is a cast on. So you've cast on one, cast on in the next stitch. So insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. And in the next one. And there you go. So cast on one stitch for every stitch of your chain. And when you are through, you should have the same number of loops as number of chains you crocheted. So if you crocheted a chain of 31 stitches, you need 31 loops on your hook. 16, then you'll need 16 loops on your hook. This is what it'll look like once you have cast on all of your stitches. Now you're going to work a return pass. This is a regular return pass. So we're going to yarn over and we're going to pull through this first loop on our hook. So yarn over and pull through 1. Now for the rest of the loops, you're going to yarn over and pull through 2. So here are my 2 loops. So yarn over, pull through 1, 2. And there they are again. Yarn over, pull through 1, 2. And there. Yarn over, pull through 1, 2. And continue until you are left with just 1 loop on your hook. Now this is going to be the return pass you're going to use throughout the entire project. So there's going to be, that'll make it easier. All right, so let's take a look here. So this is a foundation row. Now you are always going to skip the first vertical stitch because you already have it on your hook. So this one right here, you skip it. For those of you that are new to the world of crochet, here is a vertical stitch. So let's take a look at one of these. It's made up of 2 threads. So you've got the back leg, the back loop, back thread, whatever you want to call it, and the one in the front. So there you go. We're going to crochet, I should say, 2 rows of Tunisian simple stitch. So for those of you that advance, just do 2 rows and I'll see you again in a minute. For those of you that don't know how, you're going to skip the first vertical stitch and go into the second one. You're going to insert your hook behind the top leg or the top loop of the vertical stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop. And then repeat in the next one. So behind the top leg, yarn over and pull up a loop. And then again, yarn over, pull up a loop. And then you just repeat until you've cast on a Tunisian simple stitch in every vertical stitch of the row. Once you get to the end, and for those of you that are reading the written pattern, this last stitch, I normally say you cast on in the final stitch of the row. So the final stitch, this one right here is the chain from the previous row. This is the final stitch of the row. So this is the last vertical stitch, and this is the final stitch. So in the final stitch, what I like to do is just grab the stitch like this, so that I've got 2 threads on my hook. And then yarn over and pull up a loop. And now you just work a regular return pass. So yarn over, pull through 1, and then yarn over, pull through 2, 2, 2, until you are left with 1 loop on your hook. Repeat this a second time so that you have 2 rows of Tunisian simple stitch, and then we'll begin with the, I guess, harder part of the stitch. Alright, so once you've got your 2 rows of Tunisian simple stitch, your work should look like this, where you have the foundation row, and then row 1, row 2. Now row number 3 is going to be different, because this stitch is a 3-row repeat. So for row number 3, we're going to Tunisian simple stitch into that second vertical stitch. So Tunisian simple stitch 1. And then you're going to count and skip 3 vertical stitches. So we're going to skip these, and then you're going to, I guess, crochet 2 rows down. So 1, 2, and we're going to go into this stitch. So skip 3, so 1, 2, 3, I guess count 3, and then go down 2, 1, 2. Try to insert your hook into kind of a thicker part of the stitch. You're going to go all the way to the back like this. And then you're going to yarn over and you're going to pull up a loop. So here's where it gets kind of, I guess, not difficult, but here's the funky part. All right, so you're going to have to Tunisian stitch into this first vertical stitch. So once you already have this long loop like this, you're going to insert your hook behind the top leg of the first vertical stitch you skipped. So it'll look like this. Once you have this on your hook, you're going to yarn over and pull through both of these loops so that you only cast on 1 stitch. And then you're going to Tunisian simple stitch in the next 2 stitches. So here's vertical stitch number 2 that we skipped, and vertical stitch number 3. Those are both Tunisian simple stitch. And now you're going to insert your hook right back down in this stitch, the way through, yarn over, and pull up a loop. And you're going to Tunisian simple stitch in the next vertical stitch. So the one, just the next one available. Once you've inserted your hook behind the top leg of the stitch like this, yarn over and pull through both of those loops. And that's what it'll look like. If you loosen this one up, so as you are crocheting it, it's not going to pull on your fabric so tight. So when you insert your stitch, just kind of pull it so that it's a little more loose before you finish the stitch, and it'll lay a little bit flatter. All right, and then you're going to repeat it. So you're going to skip 3, so 1, 2, 3, count down 2, so 1, 2, this rolled up, there we go. So down here, insert your hook into the stitch, just in the thickest part if you can. Yarn over and pull up a loop. Keep it nice and loose. And you're going to go into that first vertical stitch, Tunisian simple stitch like this, yarn over and pull through 2. So Tunisian simple stitch 1, Tunisian simple stitch 2, and then you're going to do another long stitch. So insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, nice and tall like this. Tunisian simple stitch in the next available stitch like so. So yarn over and pull through 2. And then just repeat. 1, 2, 3, down 2, 1, 2. Insert your hook, yarn over and pull up a long loop, and then simple stitch. And this is the part where I would generally lose my stitch count. So just make sure that you did get that first vertical stitch and that it's not hidden somewhere over here, because it'll throw off that stitch count and you'll have to undo your work, and that's not fun. All right, we're going to go down here and pull up a loop and Tunisian simple stitch, excuse me, in the next available stitch. So the end is going to look like this. You're going to have the last vertical stitch and then the final stitch of the row. So if you're reading the written pattern, this is the final stitch of the row. So Tunisian simple stitch in the last vertical stitch, and then cast on into the final stitch of the row, and then return pass. Just a regular return pass. And that's it. So the 3-row repeat is 2 rows of Tunisian simple stitch, and then 1 row of, well, what we just did with the long stitches. So remember that at the end of row number 3, I didn't count them, but I've been practicing this one for a while. Make sure that you do have the same number of stitches. So once I had cast on everything, before working that return pass, if I would have counted my loops, it should have been 16 loops. And that tells me that I didn't skip any stitches, or that I didn't forget to do the yarn over and pull through 2 on these longer ones, because that will throw off your stitch count. You'll end up with an additional loop on your hook if you don't yarn over and pull through 2. All right, once you've done this, like I said, you just go back and do 2 rows, Tunisian simple stitch, and then this one. You need a total of 24 rows. Your foundation row does not go into this stitch count, or row count, sorry. So skip this one. We're on row number 3. You need a total of 24, and then we're going to work the bind off. So complete the rest of the work, and I'll see you again in a moment. I'll show you how to do that bind off. For those of you that are advanced, the bind off is going to be a Tunisian simple stitch, and you're going to end it as a slip stitch. So normally I do Tunisian stitch, Tunisian simple stitch single crochet. This one's going to be a slip stitch. If you have no idea what that meant, don't worry. Let me finish a bit more of the sample just to show you the stitch a little bit more. It's a little more visible with this white yarn than it is with this blue one, but I'll crochet a few more rows and then I'll show you how to do that bind off. All right, so once you've crocheted your 24 rows, we're going to crochet this bind off. So this is what the bind off looks like. It's going to create a very similar edge to that first row we crocheted. Now to do this, let's pull this here. You're going to need to end on a row 3 repeat. So I completed my row 3 and then I did the return pass, and this is what it looks like. You're going to stitch into that second vertical stitch. So remember, always skip the first, go into the second one and cast it on as a Tunisian simple stitch. Once you have both loops on your hook, you're going to slip stitch. So you're going to pull this top loop through this bottom loop. Now you're going to repeat this in the next one. So insert your hook into the stitch, so Tunisian simple stitch. And when you have both loops on your hook, you're going to pull the top one through the bottom one for a slip stitch. So cast on Tunisian simple, end in slip stitch. Tunisian simple stitch, slip, simple stitch, slip. And that's going to create that that bind off. Because if you don't do the bind off, your stitches are going to look like that. So just gives it a nice little finish. Once you are through, here, I'll show you on the actual square itself. So when you finish the row, so there we go. So I've completed that bind off. You're going to finish with a chain. So you've crocheted a slip stitch into this final stitch. You're going to yarn over, pull through to chain 1. This is going to make a small knot here at the bottom. And then you're just going to cut your tail end of yarn, pull your hook out, pull your thread out, and it's going to look just like this. You're just going to have a single thread, and then you just weave it in. Since I've shown you how to weave in ends in the last 2 stitch videos, so stitch number 1 and stitch number 2, I'm not going to show you how to do it in this video, so just go through and watch it. But make sure that when you are hiding your tail ends on this one, you weave them under these long stitches. So these ones right here. So just hide it somewhere underneath that. Make sure you don't go all the way through on both sides. But that's it. So that is square number 3 for our Tunisian stitch sampler Afghan or throw. I can't remember if I named it a throw or an Afghan, but it's that blanket made of sample stitches, that one. This is stitch number 3. Okay. All right, I'll see you guys again next week. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and if you would like to check out more of my work, you can always swing by the website, that's modebespoke.com, or you can stop by my Instagram page. All the links can be found at the bottom of the video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.